thank you for joining us for yet another episode of That Solo Life, the podcast for PR pros and marketers who work for themselves. I am Michelle Kane. My company is Voice Matters, and I am here as ever with my wonderful co-host Karen Swim of Solo PR Pro. Hi, Karen. How are you this morning?
Apparently really discombobulated. How are you, Michelle?
Probably very much in the same boat. I was thinking that was a January problem, but apparently not. I need to do some kind of shake it off ritual or something.
I have been just, I don't even know what this is, but I'm happy.
Hey, we're just gonna roll with it and, just try not to as long as I don't burn the house down or something at the end of the day, it's all good. It's all
There
good.
you go. There you go.
But
I don't even
today
know what to call this. A case of the Mondays that's lasting all week long. I don't know.
yes, I like that. I like that a lot. And if you're hearing this on a Monday, well, God help you. Anyway, but, well, actually, we're here to kind of tackle a serious topic.
Yeah.
Today we're talking about the ABCs of DEI, of course, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And, as I was trying to mentally prepare for this podcast, I just thought, ugh, I mean, why do we even have to have this as a thing? Because we should be treating everyone like people anyway, and but we're
Yeah,
human and we're messy, so we definitely need
for sure.
DEI.
And I think, I almost didn't want to tackle it because it's such a big
Oh,
topic, right?
huge.
And I think that we should say ahead that we are not the end all be all experts on this.
No.
But I think it's really important for all of us as communicators to continue to learn, to grow, to share information, because the roadmap has really changed on how we talk about, but most importantly, how we put action behind these things. But as communicators, so often our role may not be in shaping programs and holding people accountable. It's really in communicating what organizations are doing,
Yeah.
or knowing when not to communicate when your organization or client doesn't have meat on the bones. And
Yeah.
it's just a really complex landscape to navigate in our roles today.
That is incredibly true, and just being conscious of the experiences of everyone, and really taking into consideration everyone's point of view and their realities, because I think that's where we often get tripped up on a higher sociological level. It's like, well, just because that is not your specific reality does not mean it is not happening, and that the experiences are not real, and that there are things to be done about it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. I mean, I think one of the best things that we can do as communicators is all of us, every single human being, is to recognize our inherent biases. We all have biases. And so you have to acknowledge that and to really learn how to look outside of the lens of the biases that you may have. And so often that means, tapping into your network, your community, your team to gut check things and to get a diversity of opinions, because
Mhm.
you cannot, make communication decisions based upon how you feel or your perceptions alone. And that's gotten a lot of people into trouble. I
Right.
personally, it's almost funny sometimes watching a group of people that there's no racial diversity, whatever, debating with one another how to refer to another race. And it's like,
Oh,
why not? get outside of the circle of none of you who look like any of the people that you're talking about, it's hilarious to me. It's like,
Yeah.
that's really sad that you don't even realize that this is part of the problem, is that you're
Yeah.
talking among yourselves and you're trying to figure this out instead of just asking for help.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so don't do that at
It's
home.
it's true. It's true. And the phrase that usually comes to mind for me is, when you know better, do better.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you should be willing to do the work to know better if you don't already. I mean, like you say, seek out diversity if it's not around you, geographically or professionally. Seek it out, learn from people. You can be in a group and you don't have to be the person who always has an opinion. You can just sit and audit the class per se and, just take it all in,
True. This
you
is
know?
very true. And I think, another thing that you can do is prepare your clients and organizations for moments, for events, for
Mhm.
celebrations, for things that are happening in and around the culture, because there
Yeah,
you don't always have to comment on something. And so you need to have a documented checklist. And there are
right.
so many resources. We've talked about this in our own Solo PR Pro Premium group, and people have shared their checklist. If you're a member of PRSA, you can tap into the DEI community, into the forums there, and you can see that. I also, if you want resources on tackling these type of topics, go to Voices for Everyone on the website. I'm
Mm,
pleased to be a part of that effort as well. That has, a variety of tools and materials that you can utilize, because
mhm,
it's not just knowing the right words to say, it's really understanding the deeper underlying issues and the context, and when to speak and when not to speak. Sometimes things arise within my own client work where we have to be really honest, like, no, you should not be communicating on this because you're not really part of the solution. You're not doing anything to solve it.
right.
And it's wonderful to work with people who recognize what their strengths are and what their strengths are not. And that's not to say, I'm almost hesitant to use that as an example. It's not to say that I'm working with people who don't value and respect diversity. But if we're honest, some of the organizations that we serve just aren't there yet. They're maybe
Right.
at the beginning stages of acknowledging that there's an issue. If we're being really honest, there is a huge problem within our own industry. The public relations industry
Mhm.
is not diverse or equitable. Look at top spots, top jobs in the traditional sector. While we have a ton of women in our profession, men occupy those higher roles and they
Yeah,
still make more than women do. That's a problem.
right.
So we ourselves as communicators, our own industry has this problem. And
Yeah,
these problems are not going to get solved overnight. But again, I think it's understanding, like, where is your client or your own organization in the context of the larger picture, because you don't want to just say pretty words or communicate things because you think that it's the right thing to do. You want to start to tackle those things internally. Now, overnight, you can't go from being, a largely male company where men are making more money and there's zero diversity to being diverse, equitable pay, and check all of the boxes and solving all of the things. But
right,
where can you start? Can you
right.
start there? And when you start there, it's not, I hate that I just use the word check the box, because you want to do more than check the box. It's kind of like the NFL. I'm learning about this lawsuit from this coach.
Yes.
And one of the things that I did not realize, because I don't follow the NFL that closely, is that they have a policy to interview, but that has no teeth. So
Right.
those are the kind of things as communicators that when they come across our desk, we need to call out.
Yeah,
Here is a policy that just says that you get to walk through the door, but it's not a promise of a seat at the table.
right.
Anybody can do an interview, and then you can go check. I interviewed 10 people of color,
Yeah,
but I still gave the job to somebody that was not a person of color, who, by the way, didn't even really have to interview because I kept the same practice that I've always had of that behind the scenes handshake, the stuff that happens on the golf course, a friend of a friend type thing.
Yeah.
And so, again, this is why our jobs have become so much more complex because we are long past the days where saying the right thing is enough. It's
Uh,
not.
It's so true. I mean, I even feel it in my social media work, just kind of gut checking myself or in gut checking my clients on, just the context of, okay, everyone does the flowery MLK Day post, but in our current context of where we are culturally, it's like, it's not to say that if I don't post on their behalf, they don't believe in those values, but if they're really not a cultural kind of company, you know what I mean? It's like
Yes.
this it's almost like, okay, we see through, yeah, you're okay. So today's Groundhog Day. We're all going to post about groundhogs. Well, do we all have to post about groundhogs? Or do we all
Yeah.
have to jump on these bandwagon? Not the bandwagon, but you know what I mean? It's like if they're not say, I could say like, a company that their value is, promoting diversity, then yes, we want to talk about it. But if we're just selling widgets, it's like, people are going to see through it. They're going to say, oh, you threw that up there because and in a way it's good. It's like a growing pain. I think we're hopefully in a good growing pain
Yeah.
era. And what you said about context is so, so key. Because sometimes when things are explained to people who may be, I hate to use the word ignorant because that sounds willful, but are people who just don't know. It's like, no, do you know why that's not a good thing to say? Because or a viewpoint to have, because here's the actual origin of that, and that's not good. I
Yeah.
mean, we're seeing it
Yeah.
flash across our school boards, and even with the book Mouse. Oh my God, I saw one page of that book and I wanted to cry. And I thought, there is something sociopathically wrong with you if you think this book is a bad thing. Yeah, I said it.
And
Oh,
I think one of the heartbreaking things for me is that I am a huge fan of giving people room to fail. I believe in failure because I believe
right.
that that's where we learn our greatest lessons. That's where growth comes from. So, when you have employees, you need to give them room to fail.
Yeah,
Otherwise, they're just going to be rote. They're never going to push the boundaries. They're never going to find what they're really made of. They're never going to learn how to make these critical decisions. You're not doing them any favors. You're not helping them to grow if
right.
you don't accept failure as part of the process. And I feel like one of the things that's missing in our world of communications is that the world has this cancel culture mentality.
Yeah,
So if you mess up, even if your intentions, your heart were
right.
truly in the right place, or you just didn't know enough, because sometimes you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
We found mistakes along this journey and we jump on it and we want to crucify people who don't get it perfect on every note.
Yeah.
And yes, I'm saying this, and maybe I'll take some criticism. And yes, there is a difference between intentionally harming people, being willfully ignorant, and making an honest mistake as you're
Mhm.
learning,
Right.
because some people really are learning. I
Yeah.
understand the frustration of that from a personal level, that sometimes you just are like, come on,
Yeah.
you should have
Really?
learned. No, I get that. But if we really, we have to stay focused on the bigger outcome. And so to me, that makes our jobs a little bit harder because there's this burden of
Mhm.
being perfect, saying the perfect thing at the right moment, and
Mhm.
making sure that we do it in a way that does not isolate or offend any of our publics.
Correct. Correct.
In truth, that's always been a burden that we've had to carry. Outside of
Right.
DEI, that's kind of our job, is that, and it's one of the things that I really admire about our profession is that we sit in this unique seat of
Mhm.
being a neutral party, so to speak, that
Mhm.
serves the publics, but also the organization. And so we do have to look at it from all sides. And that's always been our job. And
Right.
to me, that's the great thing about our job, is that we're not just, team brand, we're team publics, and we're making sure that their interests are protected as well, and that they're heard and that they have a voice.
Yeah.
And too often we forget that. We forget this incredible assignment that we have. And it is an incredible assignment. Not everyone could do what we do. And I think it's why it makes PR people some of the kindest, most generous, most wonderful people in the world, because we look at the world through a different lens.
That's so true. So true. And even as you were saying that, the words, clarity came through. And, you want to speak from a point of truth and make sure it's clear and make sure it's, well understood. And to do that, you really do need to be a student of history and current events and know what's going on and, read the room, as we often say. It's like
Yeah.
you can't say that. And, did you ever think, perhaps we need to look at our own diversity and where and I love that you say give room to fail because yeah, my gosh, no one's perfect. I think more than your perfection, it's the intention, right? The purpose of yes, we certainly want to be the best humans we can be.
Yeah.
And,
Again, document, have documented policies that
yeah,
provide a framework for this type of communication
yeah.
because then you're not winging it every time. Have
Mhm.
your list of resources that you can turn to quickly because no one knows all the answers. And so
Right.
that list of resources should include things like Voices for Everyone, which is a whole
Mm,
separate website that's accessible to everyone. It is not just a PRSA members only thing. It's great. And there's new resources that are added. So you want to do that. If there are webinars or, talks around this issue, participate. You don't have to do all of them, but make it a point to say, once a quarter, I'm going to check in and see, what other communicators are doing and what the best practices are. And then, I'm a huge fan of a personal board of directors, but I'm also a huge fan of having a personal sounding board, people that
mhm.
you can go to that don't think the same way that you do, that don't work in the same industries that you do, so that you can, get different perspectives and,
Yeah.
you know, ha- get to know some people that are doing DEI work. An issue came up for me last night. And while I believe that I have the right answer, I don't want to be the only opinion that I make this decision based on. So I'm tapping into people that do this work for a living, that they're good
Mhm,
at it, they know the landscape, and can provide me some guidance and a gut check. And
mhm,
if you don't know someone like that, ask us. We can point you to people
mhm.
that, do this work. We're happy to take those questions. So, I think what I'm basically saying is equip yourself. Equip
Right.
yourself with the right tools so that you can communicate about these issues effectively.
And that's really at the end of the day, that's all you can do. Just make sure you're equipped, have that openness to learn and I don't know, I think most of us in this profession, we thrive on that anyway.
We do.
Speaking as an information junkie, not,
Yeah.
in this era of the fire hose of information, no, just like, "Oh, what? Oh,
Yeah.
gosh, I didn't know that perspective. That's really interesting. That explains so much. Oh, now I know why that's maybe not a good idea, and we should move forward this way." All these things, it's just, you know, it's the best way to really nurture your narrative along is to make sure that you're speaking with clarity and truth and compassion and understanding.
I love the word compassion. I love that
It's
word so much.
we're we're missing it quite a bit these days, but, yeah, so why don't
We
we,
are.
challenge our listeners to do an act of compassion this week with someone or,
Yeah.
seek out a new DEI bit of information that maybe you didn't know or maybe just weren't paying attention to because you think, oh, that doesn't really matter for my work. Trust, it matters for all of our work. It really does. So, yeah, we'll pop these resources in our show notes that we talked about today. And we are so grateful for you for joining us today. We hope you got a little bit out of this, maybe a lot. That'd be really cool. But please do share around, subscribe, chat us up. We would so love that. But until next time, thanks for listening to That Solo Life.